Hello, my name is Dr. Jacob Kirksey, and I'm an assistant professor here in the College of Education at Texas Tech University. And I'm excited to talk to you about what it's like being my research assistant in my Education Policy, Evaluation, and Analysis Research Lab, also known as ePearl. But before you decide if you want to join us, you may be asking yourself, what is education policy? What does education policy research look like? What is the purpose of doing education policy research? Education policy includes a broad set of laws, regulations, and decisions that could be made at the highest level of government all the way down to the classroom. When we think about education policy with respect to the federal and state governments, it can often feel inaccessible, hard to understand, or even impossible to influence. But you interact with education policies every day, such as class start times, grading policies, dress codes, or even that time you needed to ask your professor for an extension. As a result, education policy research is a very broad area of social science research that can take many different forms. But the central goal is to provide information to educational stakeholders and policymakers involved at the various levels of the decision-making processes in schools, governments, and organizations. This includes lawmakers, principals and superintendents, nonprofit organizations and private companies, and educators themselves. But what does education policy research look like? How do we even begin? Well, to start with, we are collecting more data on students, their families, teachers, schools, and other institutions now more than ever before. This world of big data has provided a means of answering questions we've yet to answer. Sometimes it can even feel data is coming out of our ears. But knowing what data are available, we can ask some really interesting questions as education policy researchers. In fact, most education policy research begins with questions we have about how to improve education and institutions for specific groups of people. For example, you may be wondering if a school district should adopt a free school breakfast program as a means of encouraging students to get to school more regularly and on time. Well, what do you think? Would you be more motivated to come to school knowing that there was free breakfast? But wait, what if this school breakfast program didn't occur in a cafeteria or require you to come to school early in order to get breakfast? What if this breakfast was served in your morning class period as part of the regular school day? Would you be more likely to come to school? More importantly, as a researcher, do you think a policy like this would have an impact on students more generally? What is the effect of breakfast after the bell programs on student attendance? This is an example of a research question I've asked as part of my research in education policy. There are numerous policies and programs in education that researchers have and continue to ask research questions. These include universal pre-K, charter schools, raising teacher pay, increased spending in higher education, intercollegiate sports, or even undergraduate or graduate research on career outcomes. That's you. As education policy researchers, we work with schools, universities, and governments to conduct high-quality research aimed at driving data-driven decision-making and policy-making in order to improve the lives of students, especially those from historically disenfranchised populations. But how do we answer these education policy research questions? Let's go back to our breakfast after the bell policy. How would you go about answering the research question about the effect of breakfast after the bell on attendance? Anecdotally, you could ask students whether they were more motivated to come to school if there was free breakfast. You could ask their teachers whether they'd noticed a difference in their students' attendance after a policy like this was put into place. These anecdotes can be extremely useful when thinking about designing a program or policy from the ground up. But once the policy is put into place, we need more than just anecdotes to tell us about whether the policy had its intended effect, the policy had unintended consequences, and whether the policy affected its intended population. To do this, we need to leverage the world of big data we talked about earlier and generate meaningful statistics that quantify the effect of policies and programs. Before policies like this are enacted more widely, though, wouldn't you want to know more about the effects of the policy? Did students, in fact, come to school more? How much did this policy cost to implement? What else was necessary to implement the policy effectively? How did students, parents, and even teachers feel about this type of breakfast program? If we didn't take advantage of the data we have at our disposal, policymaking would be a real expensive shot in the dark at trying to address some of education's most pressing needs. In ePearl, you will be introduced to the essential frameworks needed to evaluate educational policies and programs, be introduced to the function and nature of the big data world that we live in, and be equipped with the essential tools needed in quantitative research to provide answers to questions we have about educational issues in order to improve the lives of students. I hope you will join us over here at ePearl and learn more about how quantitative research can be a powerful tool in driving educational policy and decision-making in order to make our schools and institutions the common denominator that they were intended to be for students, regardless of the backgrounds they come from. See you soon.